Welcome to this week's episode of the Franchise Edge podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Adams, and this week I'm visiting with my good friend, Sonda McDaniel. Sonda owns Mr. Rooter of Sonoma County. She's owned that business now for over 25 years. Previously, she had started Mr. Electric in that same area. And then she's also at one point in time owned a Rainbow International franchise, all part of what used to be the Dwyer Group, now the Neighborly family of brands. Sonda was Franchisee of the Year for Mr. Rooter back in 2006. Her business will do $6 million in revenue this year, and she employs 30 people. So again, small plumbing franchise, or smallish plumbing franchise, Northern California, owned by a woman, doing $6 million in revenue. Sonda is just an amazing human being. I've gotten to be good friends with her over the years. She does a lot in the franchise community, specifically associated with the IFA. If you've never connected with her, I would encourage you to do so. And I hope you enjoy this week's episode with Sonda McDaniel. Hey, Sonda.
Hey, Jamie.
How's it going today?
Hey, how's it going?
Thanks. That's great. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for
having me.
Long time coming. I feel like the last time that we were on any type of Zoom or webcam thing was back in the pandemic.
It was
when we used to do our weekly happy hours with you and Nancy Bigley and Susan Beth and whoever else would be willing to join. Yep. So glad we're past that time.
Us too. Me too. I like being able to have happy hours in person with you once in a while.
True. Or at least like be a place where, you can have a happy hour, then you can also go have a real happy hour at a restaurant.
Exactly.
If you so choose. So,
yes.
Well, it's great having you. So Sonda, obviously you are a franchise owner, a Mr. Rooter owner in Sonoma County. How long have you owned your franchise now? Has it been over 25 years?
Yeah, I've been in franchising actually strictly with Dwyer, formerly, Dwyer with Neighborly for over 25 years. I started as a Mr. Electric and then ended up purchasing a Mr. Rooter in a smaller territory up in Humboldt County. And then had the opportunity to expand to Sonoma County and took that opportunity. And then eventually have done a couple other multi-unit, multi-territories, did a Rainbow International. So always staying within the Neighborly brands. It's been a good relationship for me. So it's been a long time in franchising.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was the precipice? Like at what point did you say, hey, I think I'm going to own an electrician business?
Right.
And then how did that evolve into the plumbing side? I mean, because I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I'm from Louisiana. I live in Texas now. But in Louisiana growing up, I don't know that I ever would have thought of a woman owning a plumbing business or an electrician business.
Yeah. So I fell in love with the guy. That's what, happened. So I fell in love with an electrician who was a new construction contractor, and he was looking for a way to get into the residential market and had heard of this company called Mr. Electric. At the time, I was the general manager of the first organic microbrewery in California, Eel River Brewing Company. And we met on site there, actually building that out. And he was like, hey, I have this concept that I need somebody to run. And I'm like, I don't know how to run an electrical company at all. He's like, no, they're going to teach us how. And so went to Waco, Texas, and got through a day of discovery at the Waco headquarters, at Dwyer Group headquarters back then, and was like, wow, this is pretty fascinating. I don't really need to know the whole trade to understand the business. And so what ended up morphing into this, wow, I met a guy and we're going to start this company together, found out that I was really good at business and I wasn't so great at the marriage. I'm learning. So I ended up having the opportunity to expand later into the Mr. Rooter market because we were friends with plumbers and nobody wanted to take on the Mr. Rooter. And I'm like, look, I've done this before, right? I didn't need to understand the trade or know the trade to understand the systems. And so was able to take on Mr. Rooter and then, of course, Rainbow International. And it's been an interesting climb. I mean, I'll tell you what, talk about me not looking like a plumber or a female being an owner of a business in a male-dominated industry. Try, employing men 25 years ago and saying, oh, hey, by the way, I'm your boss and I'm going to teach you, how to be really successful in your life. Yeah, we've had some challenges. I've had some challenges for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. I want to talk about that. So when you took over the Mr. Rooter, was it already a Mr. Rooter there and you ended up buying it, or did you start a new Mr. Rooter in that area?
Yeah, so I started the new Mr. Rooter and Mr. Rooter up in Humboldt County, which is a smaller territory above us now, and then had the opportunity to expand to Mr. Rooter in Sonoma County. And Mr. Rooter, Sonoma County was, we call it 1.5 trucks because one was a Ford and one was a Chevy, and you can decide which one was the half after that. And, we came in and just really wanted to grow the business, right? Start a system that was successful. And it took a little while to figure out how to do that. I was certainly one of those franchisees that bought a system and then wanted to break every part of it from the very beginning, paying our royalties every week and then going, but wait, you don't understand my territory, or wait, you don't understand, that doesn't work in my area. We definitely went through a lot of those growing pains that I talk about in my now speech that I give called the 10-year overnight success, because it certainly took 10 years for us to have any type of palatable success that we could touch,
Approximately what year did you move from Humboldt County and move into the Sonoma County? About what year was that? Do you recall?
That was about 2000. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's interesting. So I want to talk a little bit about 2000 when you started that expanding. Tell me about your marketing strategy. I always think about you remember, was it which late night TV show in the year 2000? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
was that I can't remember which one that was. Anyway,
no.
So in the year 2000, which wasn't that long ago, tell me about how you thought about marketing your franchise back then.
We relied a lot on the home office, right? We relied a lot on corporate to dictate what we were supposed to be doing. Obviously, systems were important for us to follow, even though I was trying to buck them, I had some good mentors that were like, maybe you should try it. Just try following the system and see what happens, But back then, look, we were in the yellow page industry, right? So plumbers needed to have the biggest, the brightest ads, and what could you afford and how many phone books were in your area that you could get, double truck ads to. And, you're basically making all of your marketing decisions at one time of the year for the whole year and really hoping that it paid off. As far as, how to get the phone to ring, we definitely still incorporate some of those strategies, those old school strategies, like we door hang and, we put up our yard signs and those kinds of things. But it was all about yellow pages, one time a year. Here's our big budget and it's a bust. And we just hope and pray that the phone will ring, that, it was a successful ad campaign.
Yeah. It's crazy. And then just a short, 8 or 10 years later, right, there's the huge transition into Google kind of coming in and slowly starting to displace the source where people used to leverage the yellow page to go find the local plumber. Now they're going to Google. And I remember, we worked together in a little bit in that capacity back then at a different company that I was with. You had a very, very strong reputation of being very bullheaded and very demanding when it came to monitoring your Google ads. But I want to kind of skip ahead. Let's just kind of bifurcate or bypass that middle area. So back then, 2020 years ago, you're making kind of all of your marketing and advertising decisions at the beginning of the year. You're placing your ad buys in different yellow pages. Maybe you're doing some other things, but then you kind of set it and forget it.
Totally.
What's it like for you today? How do you think about marketing and advertising in the business today?
Oh, 100%, 180 degrees, right? Change. So the fact that we would used to just go on a wing and a prayer for a 1-year commitment is crazy. Now we are real-time strategy. We are fast-paced daily. How many calls did we get? Did we benchmark correctly? If not, we're on the phone with our team at Scorpion and saying, hey, we missed our call count goal this week. How are we doing? Give me some reporting that I can't see, or if I can see it, teach me how to read it. And we definitely have changed significantly because we can make real-time decisions as we need to, right? This is the business of being quick and swift and making, decisions on the fly that that basically give my team the opportunity to succeed, right? I had this amazing team. It took years to build, retain, and attract these talented, incredible team members. And I need to give them the opportunity to do what they do best. So it's my job to provide them opportunity. I take it very seriously.
Yeah. How do you think about that as a plumbing business, right? You've got, for lack of a better descriptor, capacity planning, right? That's relative to the number of techs that you've got, the average number of jobs that they can run in a given day, week, month, et cetera. How do you kind of think ahead and plan ahead? You mentioned call counts, goals that you've got. Just overall, when you think about how marketing impacts each of those components, how do you kind of operationalize that? Just very, very high level.
I mean, very high level is I love setting our targets based on a couple of years, right? So in the very beginning of January, we'd have an all-team meeting, and I love to put, where we have been, and that was the previous year or 2 years ago, where we are, our current year that we finished, and where we're going. So where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And so we'll gather all the data that we have. What were the incoming calls? What was our close rate? What was our job average? What was our NPS score? What was our estimated? Like we'll drill down from that big, look, we had, 365 days worth of data. And then how do we drill down to make it, possible for us to attain these targets on a literal weekly and daily basis?
Got it. Mm-hmm. And then how do you think about as you're growing, as your business is growing, and let's just take the COVID fun time and package that up and dump it over here and not talk about what life was like then. But in a normal-ish year, as you think about growing, how do you think about and plan for when it's time to maybe bring on a new apprentice technician or perhaps even a more experienced journeyman technician? How do you think about and plan for those things?
Yeah, I mean, we've always been one that have been like, let's be growth ready. I mean, from the very beginning, like, look, we're coming up on 25, almost 5 years. It would be potentially 3 recessions that this business has gone through, right? So we know that the most frustrating thing can be when the faucet turns on, and if you're not ready, then you miss a big part of a revenue that you could capture if you were growth ready. So we always have an apprentice going. We always have that next level. We're lucky to have a couple of divisions in our organization, which is like an underground division, which is a starting kind of level, like the hardest workers, right, in the field. Yep. And then they're constantly wanting to work up to be a technician, which is those first responders that our customer faces. And of course, with our office team as well, I'm always looking to see how can we be growth ready. We certainly have quarters that are busier than others. And so we know, hey, we can't afford to not have technicians ready, when the phone rings. But as we are looking for growth and development, we also know that there's a capacity that can happen for each technician. What does that capacity look like? And so that's when I work really closely with our call count situation. I mean, I'll literally call my market Scorpion, I'll be like, look, I'm ready to add another van. It's going to happen in 2 weeks. And then when we have this other van, then I want to increase my call counts by this much. So we understand, what the target is. And then, so if I can express what that is with my marketing team and how we make marketing decisions, then we're way better set up for success.
Yeah, got it. That makes sense. So obviously, today when you think about marketing and certainly digital is a big component of that, I would probably argue that even still, in your service-based businesses, traditional search is probably a big component, right? People going to Google, going to Bing, things of that nature, finding your business there. But beyond just kind of how you think about search, how do you think about things like social media? How do you execute against those strategies just to have a presence on those channels like Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have a daughter that just graduating from OSU in Corvallis, and her degree's in marketing. Amazing.
What do you know?
Grace is helping us do a great job, as well as some other vendors as well that make it easier to, capture what you should be doing daily. So we try to build our reputation, and it's been great for us, right, to be the local plumber because we've been around in Sonoma County for over 30 years. The name has been here prior to me being here, So what we really try to focus on is branding. We really just want to make sure that they're really familiar with us. They feel comfortable with us. They remember seeing us. We're supporting our community, sponsorships for schools. We're, and then we're posting that to social media. We're educating our customers about what these crazy storms that we had this fall, what does it mean to have a sump pump? A lot of education is big for us. We use social media for that, as well as making sure that, we're that brand in the community. And we also use it for recruitment. Like, we have fun here, you know, part of our code of values is having fun in the process. And so we talk about and show what it looks like for us having fun when we do campouts or, we do community food drive events together. So that's also a huge component of just continuing to build our brand within our community.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about how it played into recruitment, because I know a big challenge that a lot of our customers have, particularly in the trades and in residential services, is around hiring and retaining good talent.
Absolutely.
So I know that just from being around you a long time, from interacting with some of your employees, I know that culture is really, really important to you, not just being part of Neighborly and code of values, but within your own franchise. Culture is a big part of your business. How has that evolved over the years? How have you had to adjust and change your approach to leadership, from back in the day when it was like you had to convince people that, hey, this is a woman-owned business, and yes, in fact, I am going to be your boss, but you can trust me. That's probably a little more normal than it is, or today than it was. But just in general, how have you had to kind of evolve your approach to leadership and how you think about culture within your business?
Yeah, I mean, culture is definitely one of my favorite pieces, right, to talk about, because I kind of accidentally built this culture just by creating a place that I wanted to come to every day. So if I was going to be here every day, I wanted it to be fun. We do dirty jobs. Plumbing is a dirty job, right? And so how do you convince people not only to get into the trade, but also, oh, by the way, this is going to be unlike anything you've ever been a part of, because every Tuesday we start our meeting with some awesome music, and, we read our code of values as a all team meeting. Every person that's part of our company does it all together. And we go over our numbers and we go over what our pitfalls were to avoid and where did we win and where did we learn. Like, every week we do that. And so that builds that foundation of culture. And it's easy to say, oh, now that's how you did it. And it's funny because I get asked a question a lot, even from my own girls, was like, Mom, how did you learn to do this? And really what I always tell them is it starts with one. And really, we ended up with one employee, right? Because change is scary and people are like, whoa, these people are going to hold me accountable and they're going to, incorporate rules. So, wow, I don't know that I want to be a part of that. So you had to start attracting the right team members in. And so I remember in the very beginning, we have, the 14 steps of our system, and we have code of values that are about 12 code of values or so. And we read the code of values and we call on another person to read the next code of value. And it was 3 of us. So we're just going, and me, and then you read, and then I'll read again. And then, and so, just like where you have to begin with the end in mind, you really become this huge salesman and huge cheerleader for your own brand that you can't even see that's coming yet. You just have to believe that it's happening. And, and so little successes, bringing in people that were like-minded and wanted to be successful, and then showing them the how to be successful. And then once they were able to be, then it's like, oh, okay, then you build on, this great foundation. And so you keep attracting the right people. And, sometimes we attract some of the wrong people. They'll go through these great interviews and then they'll come into the meeting and they'll be like, it's weird to say these code of values. I don't feel comfortable doing that. And we know now from years of experience, if they're not comfortable with the code of values, they're not going to last long and their freedom will be imminent.
Oh.
So, it's definitely been, a work in progress. You start with one and then you build from there. You build this foundation. And we've had some interesting things. I've had men, corner me in my office, shut the door because they wanted to talk to me and teach me a lesson about a thing or two. And I've had, technicians that have said, you're wasting my talents on a shovel. You don't know anything. You don't know about plumbing. And, so there's a lot of fortitude and just continuously giving them the opportunity to be successful and being like, let's keep trying, And so we've got successful by accident, just by wanting to build a team like that.
Yeah, but I mean, after 20 plus 25-ish years in business, right? You've got, at that point, you can just start pointing back to the scoreboard, right? It's
right.
hard to stay in business that long for any type of business,
right?
Much less a service-based business. So, lighter question: you mentioned music as part of these Tuesday meetings. What type of music are we playing in these things? Like, give me some, give me some ideas. Are we like Taylor Swifting, or are we?
We're ACDing, people. We're ACDing, okay?
There we go. I'm into that. I'm into that.
We actually let one of our head dispatchers. He's awesome with music, and he lets people decide. I mean, so we do all over the place. We're a Queen one day, and then we're up and coming Tyler Rich the next day. We're all over the place.
I love it.
Yeah.
So as you built the culture over time, do you think about some of your team? Do you have a group within that team that are, for lack of a better descriptor, your trusted lieutenants, right? They're kind of your right-hand people that have been with you for a long time and you really lean into them. Is there a group within your organization? Is that intentional, or is it just kind of happened over time?
I mean, I think it happened over time, and then it became one of those, I want to be intentional about making sure that these people stick around. So when I realized that I needed to grow to this next level, we would get to this dollar volume, this 3 million, and we'd just keep repeating this $3 million number, which is a fantastic, number.
Yeah.
But we're approaching 6 million this year, So
wow.
In order to do that, I had to give away all the things that had to be done on a daily basis, right? I couldn't be processing invoices or answering the phone, even though I love those things. I needed to be, having this vision about where we were going next, right? I need to be practicing real servant leadership in a different way. And so I realized that the people that were stepping up to take on those roles, those things that I needed to do all the time, were freaking amazing, right? They were amazing. And so Liz Yanes, who's my office manager, 17 years, my director of ops, Salvador Baldenegro, 18 years. He came and interviewed with me when I didn't have a position for him. I was not hiring. He had just heard about the company, and I was like, "You're so great. I really want to put you somewhere. I have nowhere to put you. Can you start at the very bottom of this company?" And he said yes. And so, speaking of him and his values as well, but it was us growing together. I mean, he's been through it. Like when you have a team like that, those two specifically, then I have an underground division foreman who's been with me 14 years. Several team members been with me 14, 15 years. Longevity is important, right? And those core people are the ones that make us, wildly successful, that make us be able to do what we do, what I can do in order to continue to drive the company. And they just do it well. I can't speak of them enough. Whenever we celebrate cool acumens and awards, it's phenomenally always them. It's always them.
That's awesome. I can tell how much that means to you. Just you're getting a little voice crackly as you talk about that, which is awesome. I mean, 17 years, 18 years, 14 years. I mean, goodness gracious, that's fascinating. That's awesome, and congratulations. That's just incredible.
Thank you.
And I think so. Just thinking about the importance of things like culture and leadership, and employees sticking with you. Some of the ways that I think that manifests for the small business owner are in your reputation. And anybody that's listening to this, you can go to Google and you can search Mr. Reuter of Sonoma County, and you're going to find their Google profile. And what you're going to find is over 500 reviews of a very, very abnormally high star rating for a business with that many reviews. So, and one of the things that I loved, and I think is a best practice, we talked to a lot of our small business customers about this, is you have somebody actually going in and responding to all of those reviews and letting your customers know, hey, I heard you. Doesn't even if it's a great one or if it's a not so great one occasionally, you're paying attention, you're responding. At what point did you kind of implement that strategy and say, hey, we got to start paying attention to this and really, really think about what our public reputation profile is like? How did you decide to go attack it that way?
Multiple people helped with that, right? Not only our mentors that we speak to, vendors such as yourself, right? Corporate helped us, but our other Mr. Reuters as well. We we get to be surrounded by the best people that do this all the time. That's still why I pay my royalties today.
Yeah.
I always say that my royalties used to be a tuition because it taught me what I needed to learn. And then now they're my membership dues so that I can hang out with the best and brightest people in the world, right? So we knew that it needed to be a strategy when customers were able to say something and then not be heard. Like, we want to be heard when we speak, right? So we wanted to make sure that they understood that we're a local voice and that we hear you and we appreciate you. And not only to continue to build our brand, right? So that people know who they're going to do business with, but then more strategically, how we respond to those, like learning things, like putting keywords even in our response to our customers that helps us with our SEO ranking. And, it's important. So, we have we have 2 people dedicated to that so that we can hopefully respond within 24 hours of any review on any site that we have. Thanking them, or if there was a challenge, like, hey, this isn't our normal business and we are so sorry that you experienced this. Let's, have an opportunity to make it right. So we definitely value our feedback for sure. I mean, sometimes we're like, can we offer you some feedback? And we go, no, I don't like it. But we know that we get better for it. Every time.
Yeah, totally get it. I also think it's, I think in a day where we're flooded with what ideal looks like on social media. Everybody's posting their highlight reels, right? That we forget that, look, we're all humans. We're all doing our best. And occasionally something goes wrong or goes awry or doesn't quite fit what we intended to happen. And I think people are catching on to that. I think it's important to just acknowledge that sometimes it may not have gone as planned. Doesn't mean the intention was ill-willed, but just, again, humanizing that response the way that your team does. I don't know. I know Ashley was one of the people that I noticed was responding. You mentioned there were 2 people, but I think it's great that you've got someone assigned and dedicated to actually pay attention there and go attack those things.
Yeah, Ashley's amazing. She does a great job with our customers because she is full of joy herself, and so she that's
definitely the type of person that you want doing that. Somebody that's full of joy, for sure. That's a great descriptor. All you people that are listening to this, if you're operating a small business, you care about your online reputation, you think about deploying someone to pay attention to it, make sure that person is full of joy. So that's great. That's a great nugget. Let's talk a little bit about your customer. So I would imagine, and I'm sure that this probably changed around, after COVID, but how has your customer evolved in the last several years in terms of the things that they maybe care about now that you don't think they cared as much about maybe 10 years ago? I'd love to talk about how they interact with your brand and how they interact with your people. In terms of, like, I would imagine there was a time where they had no choice. They had to call if they wanted an appointment. Maybe now they're doing things like chatting or texting through your website, or maybe even looking to schedule online. But just things like across the board. What are the big ways that you've noticed your customers evolved the last several years?
Yeah, I mean, the customers have evolved in a big way, just as we have evolved in how we do business with people that we're, whether it's a restaurant or a service brand or anything. So, right, in the beginning, people don't know how to shop for plumbers. I don't know that people know how to shop for plumbers now, right? But in the beginning, hey, 83% of our customer was a female picking up the phone, trying to understand how it works to book a call for a plumber. And so we do a lot of training on how to communicate effectively, right, with women and men. But specifically, if our customer, the primary facing customer was a woman, then it helps that a woman was leading this company to be like, hey, this is how we communicate, right?
Yeah.
So our customer didn't know how to shop for plumbing. I don't know that they still do, but what they do know how to do is shop, right? So our customer has evolved now with obviously internet and Google and things like that, where they can now search for things like, gee, how much is this going to potentially cost me? How many options of people do I have? How many plumbers are in this area? And if I'm going to have something installed, maybe I should get 3 bids for that. Maybe I should figure out who I'm going to use. And so this is why I feel like branding is so important, because it tells the customer the story of who we are. And we've had numerous tens of thousands of dollars of jobs come our way because of what we do in our community, because of who we support. And if it's a parent whose, son did a walkathon and saw our name there and that we were one of the number one sponsors of their school, they're like, I'm going to do business with you, clearly, because you're supportive of our community. So, customers have definitely changed. Hey, in the pandemic, even, we talked about that service brands did pretty well, right? We're recession resistant in a certain way. And we were, inundated with calls because people were staying home. And so they were using all of their things a lot more than they would normally do. And then had maybe family members had to move back home or children had to move back home. And so we had the luxury of scheduling whenever, it was like, 2 weeks for the plumber. Okay, I'll wait, and that is not the case today, right? We are back to the pre-pandemic days of really earning our customers' business. And so we want to do business with them how they want to do business with us. And that means not really talking to us that much. That means scheduling online. That means making sure that we capture them while they're at our, website, or giving them the opportunity to schedule an actual appointment time, live person, at midnight, because they know they're going to have somebody at 7 a.m. Then that's the case that they want to be able to do that by not necessarily speaking to someone. Even Ashley, who's full of joy, is ready to answer that phone call. Sometimes our customer doesn't really want to talk to us, right? So giving them the tools to make it easy to do business with us. That's what I really want to do. Like, how can we make it easier to do business with us? And that includes these technologies that are, interfacing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, and this is not a Mr. Rooter experience, but I've had Mr. Appliance in my house more times than I can count. And one of the things I've always really valued about that experience is there is like an online booking feature for Mr. Appliance, so I can be in a meeting, knowing that I've got my stove is broken, or I need to install a new stove. Had a this is the most embarrassing story, Sonda, side note. My microwave stopped working a week or two, that was a couple of weeks ago. So I went to Mr. Appliance and booked an appointment, and they came out and they informed me that it was the breaker had tripped.
No!
And it's not my finest moment, but all that to say, they make it really, really simple for me to just get somebody out here. I got to pick a time. I know they're going to send me a text when they're on their way. It's a seamless experience. I think that's really important. And you said something a few minutes ago that I, again, just want to call out. You're looking to do business with customers the way that they want to do business with you. And I think that that's really, really important. Something else you said, though, in that response was you talked about the importance of the brand. And in your case, obviously you have the benefit of being with a brand like Mr. Rooter that's been around for a really long time. Has a great story, a great reputation, just on a national level as a brand. But within your local community, you talked about things like sponsoring, Little League and sponsoring community events and things of that nature. I think one of the downsides that I personally have seen is when the internet kind of came in and so many dollars from marketing and advertising shifted online. There was this movement to everything's got to be measured. Every dollar we spend has to equate to a lead tomorrow. Otherwise, it's waste. And when you think about branding, that's not really the case, right? There's a certain allocation of effort and or marketing and or advertising dollars relative to just making people aware of who you are in the market, that you are in fact a local business, that you are involved in the community. Just putting that awareness out there and just trusting that over time is going to have a payback. So how do you think about, when you think about spending money on anything brand related that is not going to mean a lead tomorrow, how do you just personally wrap your head around that and budget for that relative to the dollars that you spend that you need to generate leads almost immediately? Yeah,
I mean, that's a great point. We have been through such ebbs and flows with what type of marketing we do, whether it's, data-driven, sales-driven that, like you said, to your point, needs to convert immediately versus branding. And I'll tell you, like when you're first starting a company, the thing you have more than anything else is a little bit of time, right? You don't have as much money sometimes as you have time and as you're trying to learn a brand or build something. And so we knew that we could spend our time and relatively small dollars by participating in like local parades and, making sure our van was beautiful and it was recognizable, and that, those things like in the community with school sponsorships and little leagues. And it's not just, our national brands, but small businesses do that as well, right? And women-owned businesses give a ton to the community. That's one of our our connection pieces is how do we connect people together. So in the beginning, we didn't really set budget for branding because we were like, well, that's our time budget. That's the budget with time. And so it's very little dollars compared to time. But now, and I'll tell you, it's been more recent that we've had to revisit it just because, quite frankly, we got all the calls we practically needed or could even handle, right? When we just turned on these cool new LSAs and things like that just drove our call counts. And so really it's about responding back to the basics that built us. And basics that built us are all those kind of guerrilla marketing techniques, like parking our van in a very noticeable area. We're lucky that our building is in a very recognizable, well-trafficked area. Like I said, sponsoring those things, making sure that all of our technicians' children have Mr. Rooter gear when they're going to school because, all the teachers and everybody. I mean, we definitely are pro-branding. And for the first time in many years, have set a budget aside for that this year. Going to home shows, participating in home shows. We have the mascot out, and shaking hands. So
that's awesome.
This has been one of the first years in many years that we've dedicated specific dollars to branding.
Yeah, and that's also just another good call out that I want to hone in on, because you mentioned that, look, one of the benefits of having a good brand is that when you do activate some of those lower funnel demand gen channels, like you mentioned, Google LSAs, and you've got good organic presence on Google a lot of times because you've got great reviews and reputation. When you've got those things dialed in and you have that flood of calls and you maybe want to pull back on your LSA spend, those are great times to think about, well, how can I allocate those dollars back into the brand and do some things that may not have immediate payback? Because that's just going to re-strengthen when you do reactivate the LSAs. They're probably going to be that much stronger and that much more impactful in terms of leads they're going to drive into the business. So great call out.
Yeah.
So you were a new franchise owner at one time. Put yourself in their shoes. I want you to think about you walk into a room and Sonda from 25 years ago is sitting there, and you're Sonda now. What advice would you give yourself as a new franchise when it comes to marketing? Like when you think about how much they should budget, how they should think about their approach to marketing, maybe in year 1 versus year 2 and year 5. Just, what are some points that you would maybe give yourself back then, knowing what you know now?
I think that I would embrace those that were doing it ahead of me, faster, bigger, quicker, lean into the network, right? The network of Mr. Rooters or other people that are in the room and that have been there before you, creating that mentorship, being vulnerable, saying, I'm stuck. I'm not growing as fast as I want to. I'm not getting the phone to ring as quick as I want to, because in the beginning, right, you're afraid to show what you don't know. And I always talk about this with franchisors when they're trying to get their franchisees to share their P&L with them, and I was like, hey, franchisees don't want you to know 2 things, either that they are making money or that they're not making money.
Yeah.
That's why they don't want to show the P&L. And so I think that the advice would be quicker to be vulnerable. I was young and I didn't want people to know what I didn't know. And so I think that took me a little bit longer to learn, is by not leaning into getting some of the help that I needed, hence the 10-year overnight success, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I was like, okay, like break it down for me. Let's revisit what a marketing budget looks like and all the channels that I can be distributing that. I mean, budget in the beginning, what was the budget? It was just, what's left over? I don't know. And there's never extra. Okay. So,
yeah.
So I would think that would be a big one. being able to process those new ideas quicker. I remember when one of our mentors, Mr. Reuter in Seattle, his name was Vinny Spasari at the time.
I remember Vinny, yeah.
Very awesome
legend,
guy. Very
legend.
Yeah, great team. And he was one of the first ones to get out of the Yellow Pages. And I was like, what? Like, how could you think of taking that leap? So we were like, wow, other people are doing it and they're having success with this. So we really need to look into that. And then another mentorship conversation that I had when I was like, yeah, I just, calls are down. We're doing everything we can. He's like, so what did you increase your marketing budget to? And I was like, I didn't. And he's like, so you're okay with no calls and you're not going to do anything about it? It was like, oh, yeah, I don't know. So I would think, lean into those people that are doing what you do every day. Reach out to others that have the expertise in the field, and don't be afraid to say you don't know, because in vulnerability, we are able to find our greatest strengths. And so we got to be a little bit weak to get a little bit stronger. So.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And we'll wrap up soon, but I think this is a good topic to kind of end on, because you talked a little bit about the importance of talking the things that you don't know and being vulnerable and being willing to kind of open up about that. Part of your ability to do that, or anybody's ability to do that, right, is surrounding themselves with people that they know they've got your back, right? I call those people like my foxhole friends, right? Like when things go bad, who are the people that are going to get in the foxhole with you and that aren't going to abandon ship, right? They're going to be right there. And you've got a fantastic network of that in your life. I would certainly put people like Nancy Bigley and Susan Beth. I would imagine, being part of Neighborly, as long as you have, I would imagine Mary Thompson's part of that as well. How is that network of in your case, a lot of them are women, which makes a lot of sense. You let a few of us guys in the mix every now and again too, and be part of some of those deep conversations.
You got the stellar ones, right? You got to be super stellar to join the foxhole.
So how is it, again, is that something that you were very intentional about, or did that grow over time? And then you go, man, I really need to get more intentional about surrounding myself with this group of people. How has that impacted, where you are today, both professionally and personally?
Yeah. So I met my very best friend at Mr. Reuter, and I was very, very lucky. My best friend, Michelle Aliotti, is a fellow Mr. Reuter. You've met Michelle and Frank. Yep. And 21 years ago, when Grace was a baby, we went to a Mr. Reuter meeting that they happened to be at. And Frank sees Grace as a baby and is like, oh my gosh, she looks just like our baby, and was like wanting to oodle over her. And Michelle comes to our rescue and is like, he's not crazy and weird. He's not trying to steal your baby. She just looks a lot like ours. And that was the beginning of our 20-year friendship, best friendship. And when you can have someone that is in the business that you are in every day, we learn together all the time, right? We're either having marketing discussions, or we're having technician discussions, or growth people discussions. We're all the time. So super blessed. So that was kind of an accidental meeting, and thank the Lord for it, because best friends still to this day, amazingly. And to my person. So what was intentional, though, is when I joined the IFA, Dina had asked me to come in 2006. That was the year we won Franchisee of the Year. And I was lucky enough to hear Susan Black-Beth at a women's meeting. And it was the WFN, I believe. And she had the leadership luncheon. Yeah. And I saw her speak, and I just fell in love with her from the time that she was up there. I resonated with the things that she said. And I wrote her fan mail. I literally hey, you don't know me yet.
I remember this story.
But we're going to be friends, right? I would love to be friends with you. You did an amazing job. And she says, I think this is my very first piece of fan mail I ever received. And so then I became very intentional about it, right? Surrounding myself with phenomenal, women and men that help, right? Like I'm real good friends with Joe Lindenmeyer, and, he's California Closet. So different brand and does a different business, but we're still, we talk about what are the things that are going on in Paul Pickett, who's a franchisor. So, and then I'm great friends with you. So I've got my franchisor, franchisee, vendors, I've got all my, trifecta that I feel very blessed to have and continue to have that, we celebrate successes with and we learn, right? And you got to be able to have those people in your life that you can call and you know that they will help you. And if they don't have the answer, they'll help you find the answer. So
yeah. That's all. I love that. And that's something that I've experienced. Again, I think that's a big benefit of franchising in general, right? There are so many people in the quote unquote franchise fam, which sometimes I have a really hard time saying that word, but it is true. I mean, you've got such a big network of people. I mean, coming up Sunday, I'm having dinner with guys like Brad Fishman and Sherry Fishman and Ryan Hicks and Shane Evans and Catherine Monson, like all these people that, some of us aren't even like working directly together, but we are working in the same world. We're dealing with some of the same challenges. It's really fun. And it's a unique experience being part of the franchise world, getting to experience relationships like that. So, if you're listening to this and you're in franchising and you're not involved beyond just your franchise and being a franchisee owner, you're not getting out and doing things like IFA, I would encourage you to do things because you meet people like Sonda just talked about when she met Susan Beth. So that's a really encouraging note to I think wrap this up on. And Sonda, thanks so much for the time today. This has been a lot of fun. And I know it's been more of a little bit more of a formal conversation, although I think some of these things we would just happenstance talk about in conversation. But nonetheless, I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, man, thanks for having me. When you were talking about the Mr. Appliance, I was thinking, I know you can cook. So I was like, what does he care about his microwave? And I was, well, where is this going? Come on. So I'm so glad that it wasn't, it's a little thing. But
it's not microwaving. It was not a microwave dinner. It was like I was going to microwave leftovers for lunch.
Right.
And the flaw I was pointing out was just like, that's how unhandy I am, right? Like you would think that the power's not working. Maybe I should just check the breaker, but no, I don't even think to do that. I just call the appliance person. So
you are our number one customer.
It's like y'all's ideal client profile is a picture of Jamie, like the incapable guy that just has a problem and immediately goes and just wants it solved. So yes. Yeah.
Jamie, thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun. I agree. It's like one of our more formal conversations. I like our formal ones and our informal ones.
Yeah, same.
I appreciate our friendship and our collaborative working relationship as well. Thanks for having me.
All right, so I'll talk to you soon.
Very good.